My father died, and because I loved my brother so much and was very attached to him, I wanted to make up for it in any way possible. So I decided to appoint him as my leader so he could stay by my side all the time, help me, and feel like he was part of the family. Unfortunately, I never expected that a slave could harm me or that he hated me to this extent. While I extended my hand to him and tried to help him, he was plotting behind my back and scheming to get rid of me forever. All he thought about was taking my place, no matter the cost. Sadly, he started to eliminate my entire family and destroy them completely. He even seized the throne against my will. And he wasn't satisfied with that. He decided to hurt me even more. He dragged me to hell and stripped me of my humanity forever, leaving me alone. We fought a long war for a long time, each of us trying to eliminate the other in any way possible. The entire kingdom was destroyed because of us. We returned to the same moment when I put on the armor and took out my long block cloak, which the queen used to cover the rest of my body, so that I felt more reassured, and she explained to me that my daughter would see me as just a hero and that it was impossible for her to be afraid of me in that way. When I felt ready, I gathered everything I needed and prepared. I performed the ritual to begin my journey to avenge myself on my brother and rescue my daughter from his clutches. I left with the queen, and she managed to take me by way of a shortcut beneath her kingdom. We walked through a very narrow passage, filled with stones everywhere and emanating a strange smell like sulfur and salt. After a while, a huge plume of smoke appeared before us, and the sound of water echoed everywhere. There was a monster breathing underwater. We continued walking until we reached a very deep pit, like a black hole, located at the center of the earth. I knew that whoever descended from there could never return the same, and that this pit was essentially endless. The queen explained that it was a very ancient volcanic pool called the veins of the earth, which connect the entire world. It was what connected her kingdom to an unknown lake, about which no one but their world knew anything. I descended a little further and kept looking inside the pit, hoping to see something from where I stood. I was shocked to see that the water was also black and moving at a great speed. Circles and their shape are very scary, and the owner began to explain to me that any human being is Hino. I said, "From here, my body will atrophy and disintegrate in seconds, and that's why no one can pass through here." I understood why she was so determined to transform me completely before we arrived. She was worried about me and wanted me to be stronger and able to face the situation. She said the pressure down below was extremely high and my lungs could burst in seconds, but in my current state, I could endure anything humans couldn't. She told me it would be a little difficult, but certainly not harder than being a normal human. The queen emphasized that I had to get through here safely because I was already too late and my daughter was definitely in danger. I had to reach her in time, otherwise all my efforts would be wasted. She kept encouraging me, urging me to see my way to the end and reach my goal, whatever the cost, or I would die easily. Because I didn't want to waste any more time, without thinking, I made a final decision. I had to go down and face the consequences because I couldn't leave my daughter in such a situation without help. I tried until I saved her, and I preferred to pray that my brother hadn't reached his goal and that I would reach them in time. The right moment arrived, and I remembered that I was entering a war I knew nothing about. I decided to ask the queen, since she had experience with such matters, how I would be pleased if I tried to kill the monster and separate its head from its body, because it could easily come back to life, and then everything I had done would be pointless. I tried to find a specific way to get rid of it, and at that moment, she smiled strangely, approached me, and spoke in my ear in a terrifying way. She told me that this was no ordinary war, and that it was very good that I was clever enough to ask such a question before she left. She began giving me some tips, and told me to follow them if you truly wanted to get rid of it and win the war. She told me that it wasn't just a creature I could easily eliminate, and that I would have some trouble with it. She told me about its only weakness, the one through which I could get rid of it forever. After she finished speaking, I adjusted my cloak again and prepared to continue my journey. I jumped into the water without thinking, and suddenly I found myself in the middle of the plain, moving from I went to the other place, and the water pulled me in against my will, and I entered strange tunnels. I stayed in that water for a long time, and then I went to work. I was feeling very strange until I reached the depths. I couldn't see or breathe properly anymore, and I was walking very fast, not understanding how any of this was happening. The only thing on my mind was reaching my daughter and brother as quickly as possible, even if they were also in the depths of hell. Although I was afraid of this speed, I was also very happy with it, believing it would easily get me to my goal. After a while, I found myself in a lake surrounded by strange black skin. Fog filled the place, and I couldn't see anything in front of me. No walls, no buildings, only endless emptiness. While I was trying to reach them, the two of them continued on their path, reaching the end of the road and finding themselves also in the black ice. My brother was trying to keep my daughter tied to him by force so as not to harm her or himself. He was very afraid for himself the whole time, acting calmly and thinking about everything. It's a step he takes, and of course, deep down, he's terrified of everyone around him, trying to hide his fear as much as he can. Then, the two of them find each other. They are both terrified of these strange creatures, and he tries to reach them by any means. Their hunger is very evident, and my daughter is terrified. She is forced to stay with her uncle since she doesn't know how to spread out her blanket. Of course, he's trying to protect her and doesn't want any of them to reach her, because if she dies, he will die at the same moment and all his efforts will be for nothing. So he takes her and tries to continue on his way. Suddenly, he trips and falls to the ground, making a very loud noise that attracts the monsters. Meanwhile, the snake is very tired and unable to move, remaining standing in place for a long time. They both escape from the monsters with great difficulty and reach the person he came for. Strangely, he is thrown to the ground and keeps screaming loudly, saying that he was tricked and that instead of trying to help the snake, this was not what they agreed upon. He also agreed to build them a whole army that could protect them at all times, but none of that happened. He broke the agreement between them and was speaking while he was very angry, trying to find a solution to the situation he was in. The rage intensifies. Something huge happens in the valley beneath them. A very high fog appears above them, and the whole world begins to spin in a very strange way. My brother tries to sever the bond between himself and my daughter because it's a huge problem for him, and he wants to get rid of her by any means. He sees her as his only weakness and asks the being he's speaking to give him immense power so that no one can stand against him. As soon as my daughter hears this, she starts crying, knowing that this is the end and that he will kill her at any moment. A minute later, the creature he's speaking to appears. It's enormous, with long horns and terrifyingly gigantic. As soon as my daughter sees it, she falls to the ground in fear and terror. A terrifying yellow light emanates from its eyes. Even my brother is scared and lies on the ground, unable to look up, until the being begins to speak to them in a loud voice, declaring to my brother that he brought this upon himself and that he is the one. He's determined to connect his life to the lives of others, and his work is exactly what he asked for, and he's getting closer to my brother. The guard, a lone sparrow, approaches my brother, places his hand on his head, and prepares to do something specific. My brother is overjoyed, thinking he will grant the power the monster requests. He becomes incredibly excited about what will happen next and asks the monster to completely transform him, making him stronger than anyone can imagine. Strangely, the monster has a completely different plan. He wants to enslave my brother and hold him at his mercy forever. The monster approaches him and begins performing strange rituals on him, inserting a black substance into his body and throwing him into black water. At the same time, my brother begins to writhe and scream from the intense pain he feels, as if it is multiplying throughout his body. The bond between him and my daughter intensifies, and the hyena is greatly affected. She also collapses to the ground, experiencing something strange as a result of the monster's actions. She feels something enveloping her blood and screams from the excruciating pain. Suddenly, she stops making any sound and becomes completely immobile. At that moment, the lake exploded before their eyes, releasing a huge amount of black water. I appeared with it, and I was full. Anger and fear for my daughter overwhelmed me. I desperately wanted to reach her and make sure she was all right. I was shocked to see this strange creature holding my brother and doing something bizarre to him. At the same time, my daughter lay on the ground, writhing in agony, unable to stand or move. I tried to think calmly and figure out how to act so I wouldn't lose my daughter forever. I saw her dying before my eyes and wanted to save her before it was too late. I also saw my brother transform into a monster. I gathered all my strength and stood before this strange being, ready for the battle that was about to ensue. I could hear a terrifying sound coming from it, as if it was trying to scare me. At that moment, I remembered everything she had said and decided to follow all the advice she had given me so I could deal with it and win this battle. I remembered that its horns were its only weakness. They were what bound its soul to this body. If I could reach them, I could easily get rid of it. So I thought, how can I reach those horns? Destroy her and help her get rid of his spirit forever, and all this destruction will end with him, and I will be able to save my daughter from his hands. And in a moment, I started to move from my place. I went towards the creature without any fear, and at the same time, my brother was thrown to the ground, preparing to attack me. But I didn't give him a chance. I reached the mud just in time, grabbed my leg, and moved very quickly, giving him no chance to defend himself. I climbed up quickly until I reached his horns and began striking him all over his body, trying to weaken him in any way possible. I finally grabbed the right horn and tried to break it. It took a great deal of effort because it was strong and difficult to break easily. After a while, I succeeded, and the horn fell to the ground with a very loud sound that echoed everywhere around us. Of course, he also started to feel the effects, and his body was shaking strangely from exhaustion. He couldn't control himself, but he could see clearly in front of him. At that moment, I wanted to continue before he regained consciousness and tried to recover, so I jumped on him quickly and reached the second horn. Unfortunately, before I could destroy it, the monster started attacking me from all directions, and I defended myself in any way I could and endured so much until I finally reached my goal and was able to. Finally, I destroyed the second Arna, and at that moment, the monster collapsed to the ground from exhaustion. A few minutes later, it vanished completely into the darkness, leaving no trace. I was, of course, very tired after everything that had happened, and I collapsed to the ground for a while. I tried to reach my daughter by any means possible to make sure she was still alive. I was shocked to find her lying on the ground, completely motionless. I sadly thought she might be dead, and I tried to approach her calmly and try to wake her up. I couldn't accept that idea at all, and I was ready to do anything to bring her back to life. I kept trying to get her to wake up, and indeed, after a few minutes, she started breathing again. I was very surprised at how this had happened. Her whole body was trembling from exhaustion and fatigue. As soon as she woke up and lowered her eyes, she found me sitting in front of her. Of course, she was terrified of me and tried to get away from me in any way possible, screaming and asking me to hurt her. Then, after a moment, she focused more on my features and discovered the end result is that I remain her father, and she doesn't understand what happened to me or how, and she starts to feel reassured. I was with her, and she threw herself into my arms, asking how I got there. She was overjoyed to learn the monster was dead. Before I could tell her what happened, or even reassure each other, or fully grasp what had transpired, we discovered my brother still wanted to fight. He had completely transformed into a monster, his appearance monstrous and terrifying, possessing incredible strength and muscles. At that moment, I knew I was entering a massive battle, unsure who would ultimately prevail. His body was drastically altered because the transformation wasn't complete, turning him into a bizarre creature with black veins, stone-like skin, and a soulless, endless rage emanating from within. He was like a giant, ready to annihilate anyone who stood in his way. Even after his demise, he left behind a great calamity, and I didn't know how to get rid of my brother. I was terrified for my daughter and didn't want to scare her a second time. I kept wondering how to protect her. I also knew what kind of weakness I had since he didn't feel anything at all, and he started making very scary noises, making noises everywhere, and he would get closer to me and threaten me and stuff. The only thing that reassured me was that the bond between him and my daughter had disappeared, and that she was now safe far away from him. I was forced to enter this war with him to see who would finish the other off. My brother started to gather around us and attack me with all his might, hitting me. In response, I tried to defend myself in any way I could, blocking his blows. I tried to release the anger inside me by throwing a long gun at him because of the harm he had done to me and my family, and all the terrible things he had done to me. I remembered my wife and children whom he had killed, and I tried to take revenge on him in every way possible. I was so consumed by rage that he didn't even have a chance to defend himself. He was thrown far away by the force of my blows, and I started throwing him from place to place. The fight was very fierce. When I was sure he had lost all his strength, I threw him far away, and he landed on his side. I tried to calm down and catch my breath, and I started to check on my daughter and make sure that everything was over. Before I took her and left, I started hearing strange noises around me, near the lake, and I knew that there was... Golub needed something, and that's when the shock hit me. I discovered a huge number of monsters all around us, their eyes glowing in the darkness. They were watching everything that was happening, seeing their leader die right before their eyes and sensing everything that was going on. I was forced into a new battle, killing them one by one. I tried to protect my daughter at all costs, not letting anyone near her. After a tremendous effort, I carried her on my back and climbed onto some rocks. I didn't want to look back because of the horrific sight. I was trying to get her out of there by any means necessary. I could hear their voices everywhere, and all I could think about was my daughter. I knew I had to be very careful with every step I took because she could easily fall and I'd lose everything forever. Even though I was exhausted and couldn't take it anymore, I pushed myself to get her to the top. After a very long time and a great deal of effort, we finally reached the surface and found an empty space all around me. The atmosphere was completely gray, and without resting, I took it and continued on my way. I wanted to reach safety, and I kept running for a long hour until I arrived at... She cut me off and refused to let me near her. I just stared at her for a while in silence, then asked her to go inside and leave me alone. I told her that this was no longer my place and that I had to return to the place where I would live the rest of my life. Of course, she was taken aback by my words and reminded me that I was the king and had to return to my kingdom. So I had to explain to her then. I told her that I had to sell myself to save her from death and stand against the monsters. If I didn't, she would come with a whole army, and unfortunately, she would open the gates of hell on the entire kingdom, and no one would be able to stand in her way again. Zara looked very affectionate towards me, understanding the sacrifice I had made for her. She came closer and tried to summon me one last time, but unfortunately I refused and stopped her because I knew that something like that could weaken me and make me go back on my word and be unable to leave. I asked her. She needs to be strong and capable of running the kingdom herself, and I thought she would be a very great queen. People will love her because she's kind and has a big heart. At that moment, my entire army gathered because they had sensed me from the moment I arrived. They knew very well that I was coming and could sense everything I was thinking. I asked them one last time to remain silent, each going his own way and disappearing into the heart of the desert and sand, not to return unless the queen called them. They obeyed me and moved so fast that the ground shook violently beneath them. They moved away, burying themselves in the sand and disappearing completely. This was because the city no longer needed monsters. A new era would begin without any problems. And then, forever, my kingdom would belong to me and my daughter. I prepared for the new life I was about to embark on. I could hear her voice calling to me, but unfortunately, I didn't want to keep her attached any longer. I continued on my way calmly until the gate opened and a girl emerged, ran to her, sat down in front of her, and welcomed her. He was very pleased with her and happy that the queen had arrived. Finally, she will sit on the throne of the kingdom, and he will fulfill his promise to her father, just as he agreed with her. Strangely, she treats her very kindly and asks him not to be formal with her because she is just like him. At that moment, he recognizes her love the moment he describes her eyes. He is ready to do anything for her, and he gives her his father, promising never to leave her no matter what, to stay by her side and help her. He takes her and enters the castle gate, preparing them both for the future they will create for themselves. At the same time, I was returning on my way and entered the dark tunnels, wanting to reach the kingdom in time since the queen was waiting for me. I walked calmly after accepting reality and knowing that this was my new home and the life I would live forever. Of course, my body was very tired after everything that had happened to me, and I wanted to rest in any way possible after making sure my daughter was safe. Although I could have tried to escape, deceive her, and play with her, I refused to do so, and I decided to act according to my morals and the same agreement we had, and go back to her again. And I sacrificed my life on the roof and went down. To live in darkness amidst the women and children, I had to pay the price for the agreement made with them. I kept walking until I reached the queen's chamber. I found her sitting there waiting for me, smiling. She was overjoyed that I had finally returned. Of course, all her people were standing waiting for me, looking at me with respect, admiration, and love all at once. Strangely, the queen stood there, clearly eager to see me. It was evident that she had been waiting for me for a long time, afraid that I had returned. Her eyes were shining with joy, and she welcomed me warmly. She told me that the scent of victory permeated my entire being, as well as the scent of death. She asked me exactly what I had done on the journey, and of course, I began to tell her everything in detail. She was very happy that I had been able to save my daughter from death. What pleased her most was that the agreement between us was still valid, and that she had finally been able to help me save my daughter. This meant that I would continue to live with them indefinitely. She explained to me that my present was linked to. I was in their presence and couldn't stay away from them anymore. She pointed to my new spot and had made me a chair out of block stone right next to hers. She told me that this throne had been waiting for me for many years and that I was the right person for this place. Since it was my choice and no one forced me into anything, she didn't assign any guards to me or tie me down. She let me act as I pleased. In the end, I was forced to sit on this chair willingly and take over the throne. We decided to be king and queen and get married in front of all her people. Of course, they were all happy about something like this and were very pleased with us and felt safe. I knew that my name would soon be forgotten up there, and with the years, no one would remember me again. They would remember that I died in the desert and my city had disappeared too. I knew that this was the right decision because I didn't want to cause any more problems for my daughter or put her life in danger. I decided to let my daughter rule the country and not intervene except at the right time when I felt that someone might challenge her. At that time, the queen would start speaking loudly and the echo would be present throughout the place. She would see that people always harbor envy and hatred for each other and that there were many people. She absolutely cannot control these emotions, and the queen keeps pursuing her until she gains control. In the end, she transforms into a monster, and she tries to teach me a few lessons so I can live peacefully with them. I understood that there are indeed people who are impossible to change, and that the secret remains within them no matter what. And here's where the events of our story today begin. Follow me for more videos and summaries. Peace.